Now, this movie is directed by S.J. Clarkson. It's written by Matt Sazama, Burke Sharpless, Claire Parker, and S.J. Clarkson, and it's starring in a cast of Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, Isabella Merced, Celeste O'Connor, also Emma Roberts, and Adam Scott is in this movie. Now, before we get to spoilers, we're going to do a character by character breakdown, talk about some of the big moments in the movie. We do our non-spoiler thoughts, just in case you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to hear any specifics about the film. We do non-spoiler thoughts, and we'll start with that before we dive into all the spoiler-filled details with the plot points of Madam Web. So let's kick it off with you, man. How did you feel about the new Sony Marvel movie, Madam Web?
I think I think Sony was actively really trolling us. I don't know how to else to put that, but I think actually think they were like, part of me feels like they did this on purpose and thought it was going to work. I don't know, man. That's so crazy. And what's also crazy about it is Dakota Johnson feels like she's in on the joke when you're watching the movie. I know it's so, but the way she reads lines is like, do you know what you're in right now? It's almost like she knows, but it's like funny at the same time. I cannot explain it. Anyways, in case you couldn't tell, this movie is terrible. It is absolutely, it's beneath I think Morbius might be a better movie. I ain't gonna lie to you. It's really that bad. There are so many things in this movie that are terrible. It's decisions. It's acting. Oh my God, the guy who's playing Ezekiel, I forgot his name. What's his name?
Tahar Rahim.
Usually I'm like, oh, it's the story's fault. It's not even the actor. He didn't even have a good performance. Like, I was like, dang, this dude he's not bringing it. So many bad things in here. They use characters they shouldn't be using. You just brought him up. What's his name again? One more time.
Tahar Rahim.
Tahir Rahim. Tahar Rahim is playing Ezekiel Sims again as a Spiderhead. If you know what Ezekiel Sims, who he is, and what he's supposed to bring to the table, they literally. I can't believe they took this character and did this to him and threw him away like this. It actually makes me upset because now I feel like they can't use him in the way they're supposed to use him. I feel like, and that definitely upsets me. That pisses me off just a little bit. I spoke about the marketing. Again, this is I'm not even going to call it a spoiler. There are no you see these girls in the suits one time, and it is like a vision. It is a dream. These girls are never superheroes in this movie, and that is what the marketing tells you. It never happens. But yeah, this movie isn't good. The story isn't good. Sony has become, I think, a weird entity of a studio where it's very clear they don't give the directors or the people I think who are trying to make these movies autonomy. Right? You could always feel like no matter what's happening in these live action Sony films, that the Sony is breathing down the director's neck. Sony is breathing down the filmmaker's neck, and this film makes it very, 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 very apparent with marketing, with brand placement, which we will talk about because it is very apparent in this movie, and it takes away from the movie in weird parts constantly. But this it's a travesty. Everything is showing that it's a travesty. I'm actually happy. I know it sounds really bad, but I'm happy that this movie is failing the way that it's failing. Because it's everything that Jordan just said. It's time that studios start to feel that this shit is not okay anymore. And the budget to box office ratio was starting to show that. Thank the heavens. Thank God. Don't buy it on digital. Don't be streaming it when it comes out. I'm not trying to hear, oh, Madam Web went fucking crazy when it came out on Disney Plus. I don't want to hear it. I don't. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Do not watch this movie. It's not good. I can't. Yeah, it's just so much in it that is wrong and bad with the superhero studio world. It really is. Last thing I'll say to wrap up is we've kind of already talked about it, but we got to stop doing Spider-Man stuff without Spider-Man. That's pretty much it, bro. Like you can't just have these characters that exist because of Spider-Man, and to their core, you're like, oh no, Spider-Man's a part of them, and they don't. It just doesn't work. I'm sorry to tell you. But yeah, bro, that's it. I'm sorry. This is terrible.
Oh my god. The moment's finally come. I have to speak on this movie. It's really hard sometimes also to like wrap my head around even what to say when I see something like this. Like
Yep.
I don't even know always what to react to or how to feel about these things. But I guess I'll just start and say that Madam Web is just as bad as you think it is, and in some cases it might even be worse. And I'm really perplexed at the treatment of these characters, of these Spider-Man related characters on the part of Sony, because they are the gatekeepers to some of the most valuable intellectual property in all of Hollywood and all of entertainment at that.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever it comes time to expand the universe or explore other characters in the Spider-Man universe to do something different that doesn't involve Peter Parker or Spider-Man, they squander the opportunity. And Madam Web is unfortunately no exception to that, because this movie is genuinely awful. It's awful. It's such a bad movie. Rolling Stone in their review, they even said that it's the Cats of superhero movies. Now, I don't know if I'll go that far. People know me. I saw Cats. What a fucking terrible movie that was. It's bad. I don't know if I'll go that far, because I would still say that this is just slightly better than Morbius. Morbius is also just such a piece of shit, but this is just like slightly better. That's not saying a ton though,
I laughed
obviously.
more.
Definitely laugh more. Definitely
I laughed more.
had a better time in the movies than I did with Morbius, but it's certainly bad. It's the worst superhero movie that we've gotten since Morbius, and we've gotten like maybe 15 or 16 superhero movies in the past 2 years, and this is the worst one since that. And it just goes to show that Sony Marvel as a production entity, they don't got it. They don't got what it takes to make these movies of good quality. They can make money to some extent with the Venom film, but I think that they have to really look inward and say, like, you know what? We probably just got lucky with Venom. We took the right character at the right time in 2018 when things were still in a boom period. Things were the highest that they could have been, and we kind of got lucky. We did it again with Venom Let There Be Carnage. Super successful with that one. Let's go ahead and finish out this Venom franchise with Venom 3, and let's go ahead and take those winnings, and we can say that that was a huge success. These other chances that they're taking, Morbius and Madam Web and fucking El Muerto, whoever the fuck, Hypno Hustler, they still talking about that? No. It cannot happen. We cannot do this, because Madam Web, as you watch this movie, it just never got going. Like from the very beginning, from the very start of the movie, it never got going. Something always felt off. And as I was watching the movie, like even from a technical perspective, it's just like a film put together. I'm like, what is this? Like the editing is awful. It has some of the worst ADR I've seen in a big budget movie maybe ever. It is so bad. We'll talk about it more with Tahar Rahim and him, but the ADR in this movie, atrocious, just so bad. But really, the most egregious thing about Madam Web, where it all boils down to, it's the writing. The writing, the writing, the writing. The script, ridiculous. There's so much nonsense in this fucking story. I don't even know where to begin. The things that come out of some of these characters' mouths, it's like, who wrote that and who told you to say that? Like, why are you doing this? Because that stuff is bad, but I think even worse from a script level, like the logic of certain characters, like just the motivating factor behind their placement in the story is also nonsense. It doesn't make sense. With Dakota Johnson in particular, she just feels completely removed from this film from an emotional standpoint. I think that she probably showed up midway through, and she's joked about this during the press run, like, oh my God, the script has changed so many times, like the where it started to where it ended up, like so different. I'm sure she probably was reading that script midway through, like, you know what? I can't do this shit. Like I'm just gonna sleepwalk my way through this and be really disengaged and not have any emotional attachment, because what other option do you have when you know that the material that you're working with is really bad? I think that she knew that this was some bullshit, and she kind of just gave up and did what she could, but you can only do so much. Also, the villain, awful. Probably one of the worst villains in any superhero movie ever. And Tahar Rahim, it's not a personal attack against him. I don't think that he's a bad actor. He's also a celebrated actor. He's been nominated for
He
awards, but
is.
he did not act good in this movie. He was
No.
badly acting in this movie. There's no way around it. It's just bad. He's not a great character. His motivations are confusing. They don't make sense. They don't tell us anything about him. We don't know shit. And the reason why he's pursuing what he's pursuing it's kind of crazy when you think about it and when you put it together, because it's like, bro, you don't have any information. Like, you didn't do any work to like really figure out what's going on here. You're just bullheaded about what you think you're supposed to do. And I think, unfortunately, even the infusion of like youthful, jubilant energy from the other three, cast members, Isabella Merced, Sydney Sweeney, and Celeste O'Connor, that's still not enough to save this movie. Individually, I think all three of them are good. Sydney Sweeney is obviously a huge star now. She's on the rise. She's on the ascent. She's coming off of Anyone But You, which is hugely successful. Also another Sony movie, rom-com on the verge of making $200 million. Euphoria, we know like she's a big star right now, but she has to reduce herself down to a project like this. Same thing with Isabella and Celeste O'Connor. They can't do a ton. They can tell that this is just not great material. And I do want to make it clear, as I'm talking about the actors, like, I don't think any of this is their fault per se. Like, I would not place any blame of this film, the failures of this film, on the actors, because it's a mess even beyond them. I'm sure that they all did the best that they could with what was given to them, but I can only imagine their reactions when they were reading this material. When they were reading this script, they probably were like, how the hell am I going to pull this off? Like, what am I going to do with this? Like, this is almost nothing to work with, which kind of brings me to my last point, the writers, Matt Sazama and Burke Sharpless. I don't like to personally attack anybody because I don't know them. I don't have any personal connections to them, but their fucking resume speaks for itself. They have written bad scripts over and over again. Dracula Untold, The Last Witch Hunter, Gods of Egypt, Power Rangers from 2017, and Morbius, and now Madam Web. And Sony somehow said, like, what a great job you did with Morbius. Let's bring you back to write Madam Web. Like, where's the logic in that? How are these guys still making movies at this level? I just don't understand that. Again, not a personal attack, but the resume speaks for itself, bro. Look at the receipts. You have produced bad scripts over and over again. I've seen a lot of those movies. They suck. They're not great, and it's largely due to the writing. So it's really perplexing to me that we're still here making the same mistakes over and over again. And I think that that's just like a larger mindset with Sony and these Marvel properties. It's almost as if they have learned none of the lessons from superhero movies over the past 25 years. Like, we've learned so much. We've seen how far that they can go. We've seen how far other studios and other directors and filmmakers and execs have taken these characters. And it's almost like they refuse to evolve and to change with the times. This movie is set in 03. It could have been made in 03 when shit was still terrible. When we were getting Elektra and Daredevil and Catwoman and all those trash movies where we were just like, yo, this is not what I want to see. It's almost like they have just learned nothing from the past 25 plus years. It's ridiculous to me. So I'm really confused at this whole thing. And I guess to reinforce one thing you said, like, if any part of you wants to see this movie because of the potential superheroics, the costumes and the Spider Women that you can see, oh, you are rudely misunderstood and misinformed. That shit is not in this movie. You will be sorely disappointed if you go thinking you're going to see a ton of superheroes, a ton of different Spider Women in this movie. It makes up probably a minute of screen time at most. Like, it's not a factor at all. It's really just a tease for a movie that's never going to happen, because this is a big failure on the part of Sony and Marvel as an entity, not Marvel Studios, but of course, Sony and their Marvel execs who are greenlighting these feature length projects. It's ridiculous. So I guess to pivot quickly before we get into spoilers, because I'm a little hot now. I'm kind of frustrated with just even thinking about this movie. But
I'm here with you.
I do want to ask this on a bigger level, like, what's going on with female-led superhero films? Because if we're being honest about it, like, if we're being truthfully honest about it, Wonder Woman 2017, huge success, great movie, huge success for DC. But it's been a little shaky since then. Like, we just don't have a ton of great options when it comes to female superhero movies. Like, Catwoman exists, not a great movie. Elektra exists, not a great movie. Ooh. Even recent examples, we just talked about the Marvels. Obviously that didn't connect. Birds of Prey, okay, something, but doesn't largely connect. Captain Marvel 1 was a success, made over $1 billion, but I think people walked away like, yeah, the quality still wasn't that great though. I'm just kind of curious, like, what's going on here? Like, why do you think that it's such a difficult thing for these studios to make universally beloved and commercially successful female-led superhero movies? Like, what's actually holding them back at this point? What's not connecting with general audiences?
Man, at a very basic level, misogyny, bro. I think that there comes like a point in time where a woman, a female led superhero comes across an exec's desk and they're like, okay, let's greenlight it. But this is your budget. This is the team that's going to be around it. Is the real energy being put into that team that needs to be put into that team? Is all the players that need to be put into that being put into that? I don't know. That may not always be the case. I think something else that's there is a lot of the best superheroes, female superheroes that we have in comics are usually part of teams. I know it's like it just is what it is. Like a lot of I'm thinking about like my favorite women superheroes: Storm, Jean Grey, Raven, and Starfire. Gamora. You know what I mean? Like a lot of them. Emma Frost. A lot of them are part of X-Men. A lot of them are part of Teen Titans. A lot of them are part of other groups of people. Zatanna, Justice League. You know what I mean? A lot of them are part of other groups, and I think it's also in the source material a little bit. We need to also do work to get to the period where in comic books we like characters already, like a single titular female character in a comic book, we love them. And now I think we're trapped in kind of this weird bubble where if there is a new comic book character, female comic book character, we've probably only liked her for like 10 years max, right? Like I'm thinking about like how many have we had, right? Miss Marvel, she's only been around probably about 10 years. I think one of the oldest ones we've gotten recently is Carol Danvers, and even that's like you know what I mean, that's a little she's never really been like that loved, you know what I mean. It's just it's kind of the nature of the characters we have in front of us already, and a lot of the cool characters that are single titular female, we don't know them yet, or a lot of people don't like them yet enough for us to make a movie. You know, it's not time for them yet, or people don't think it's time for them yet, although they may exist. And so it's like, damn, so now who do we have? And yeah, and I think that makes it hard. I really do. It makes it difficult. What's weird about Madam Web is they had three very important Spider Women a part of this movie. All three of those young women are playing three very important Spider Women. All three of them are fire too. Not to mention we got Silk coming up, who is, if you know what Silk is, again, she's like one of my favorite Spider people. She's really dope. But it's again, they're all tied to teams or something else. Even Invisible Woman, Fantastic Four, like it's hard for us to get that single woman led movie. And I think and I think, yeah, it's just really hard. And so that's why I'm kind of proud of what we did with Shuri, right? And in Black Panther 2. It's like, oh my God, it almost felt like we finally got one. You know what I mean? It was like, damn, thank the heavens we got another one. Because again, like you said, that first Wonder Woman, yes, we got her. You know what I mean? That was also like a breath of fresh air. Wonder Woman, we did it. Now what else can we do? And we have been struggling ever since. And so I think it's a multitude of things. It really is. And I think it's gonna take a minute for us to get it right. But I think as on the basis, we gotta begin to celebrate some of our new singular titular female characters as well, in order to plummet them to the top of what could be a comic book movie for them as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Just the nature of a lot of these female superheroes being a part of bigger teams, and so we've seen successes in the way of that. Like I think Gamora and Nebula, a part of Guardians, really well developed characters. Some of the best parts of those movies, you know,
Mm-hmm.
amazing. But when you look at the singular heroes that can kind of stand on their own, they can kind of operate in their own vortex of whatever universe they're a part of. We've kind of done it with Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel. Like, unfortunately, that is kind of the extent of like the big giant superheroes that people either are super familiar with, or even if they're not, in the case of Captain Marvel, there is still a long history with that character from the comics. Like, she had been around in the comics for a really long time, so
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot that you could pull from, and you can tie her in with the Kree and the Skrulls and Shield and all that stuff, and then ultimately the Avengers. Here in this case, and I think in a lot of other cases, unfortunately, these characters have become afterthoughts to studios. They're not necessarily at the forefront of what they've thought about because they've operated out of the pretext that, like, yeah, we gotta do, Captain America or Iron Man or Batman or Superman, which, totally right. I think, like, yes, you need your pillars to be successful before you want to spin out and do other things. But now in this day and age, and I kind of talked about this a little bit with Blue Beetle. It's different because we're talking about ethnicity versus gender, but we're in a stage where, like, yeah, the comic book movie boom, it's happening, or it happened. Maybe in the past tense it happened, and
Mm-hmm.
and and the movies that we kind of always wanted to see, they're just now starting to get made, but unfortunately they're not able to accumulate the successes of when things were actually, like, really sweet and really good. Like Blue Beetle's solid movie. Why did it take so long for DC to say, like, yeah, we're going to give our first Latino superhero, a feature film? Like, why are we going to wait
Mm-hmm.
all this time to do that? Like, we could have done that maybe 5 years ago when things were really,
Just
really
like Black
good.
Widow.
And, like, yeah, exactly. And it's like, maybe that movie would have been much more successful if it came out in 2017 or 2018 as opposed to 2023 when shit's not great. Now, Madam Web, it doesn't really work in any timeline. There's no example of when it works, but still, I
Yeah.
think the case can be made. Like, maybe it might have squeaked by and did something like Venom. Maybe people would have just been like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? We're just gonna have a good time. It's not a great movie, but we'll show up because, like, we're existing in a moment right now where we want to see these characters on the big screen. But now it's like a fucking wasteland, and so it's doubly offensive. It's doubly bad. The movie is bad, and then it performs poorly. So nothing. There's no win that can be taken away from this, and so the afterthought process, the fact that, like, these studios have just, like, prolonged a lot of the development of these movies for such a long time, it's coming back to bite them in the ass. Even Black Widow, like, that movie should have been made in 2016, 2017. We didn't get it
Mm-hmm.
until 2021, and it's like, damn, it's kind of too little too late. This movie would have been more successful, probably better received when the hype and the fervor was there for that character in the prime of the MCU. Now we
Mm-hmm.
have to wait until the MCU is, like, on one leg. It's kind of wobbly. It's like, yo, we should have been done this because Scarlett Johansson, huge star, huge big blockbuster star. She deserved that moment when the flame was burning at its hottest, quite frankly. And so I think that it's going to take a long time to repair this relationship between studios and audiences to get that trust back. And hopefully with those characters, they can take some of the newer characters, give them the spotlight earlier, and do a better job at it. But then also figure out ways to take those characters that might even be a part of supporting casts and figure out ways to make them interesting, that people would
Exactly.
want to see them outside of the context of being a part of a team. So we've talked a lot about this movie without spoilers. Let's go ahead and officially get into it and talk spoilers of this movie. So if you've not seen Madam Web, or if you just don't care and you just want to listen to the rest of the conversation, be my guest, because I like, what are we really spoiling? I don't know, but this is an official spoiler warning. And as we like to do, we do a character breakdown of all the major players in this movie. Of course, we got to start with Dakota Johnson, playing the titular character, Cassie Webb, aka Madam Webb. Now, in this movie, she's a paramedic in Manhattan. The movie is set in 2003. And we see very early on, while she's on I guess, a rescue mission. She's doing her job. She's in an accident. A car falls over a bridge. She's trying to rescue a civilian, and she lands in the water. And presumably we think she's going to die. She might sink and drown underwater, but she's able to escape. But she's developing these psychic abilities, which allow her to become a clairvoyant. We know that she has the ability to see future events. That's kind of the power of Madam Web. Now, what's
Mm-hmm.
interesting is that in the comics, Madam Web is typically depicted as an elderly, older woman, but this is a younger, 30-something, woman who's working in New York City who develops these
Mm-hmm.
abilities. And again, they have removed a lot of the Spider-Man connections that could be there. What did you overall think about Dakota Johnson? Her role in this. What she brought to Cassie Webb. Any big call outs or big moments from the movie that you wanna point out?
I still think she was in on the joke. Like mid, to be honest, like I would have gave this movie even worse rating if it wasn't for her. I think she had me rolling in this movie. I ain't gonna lie to you. Like so many ways that she was reading lines. I mean, the whole theater was like erupting because it was so cheesy and so corny or so misplaced and so weird at times and eerie in the way she would say things. It was like you can't not laugh. It was so cringy, and you almost had to laugh at the cringe. And so I have to give kind of like a shout out to her because I almost like hated her performance so much that I liked it. I can't explain that. I know it's weird, but it was like it was really comedic. I think, in that way. Madam Web as a character, man, and who she was playing, it was already interesting the ways in which they were going to change her for this adaptation, right? Because Madam Web in the comics, she was born like this. She was born blind. She was born a clairvoyant. I'm pretty sure she's a mutant. Which again, you can't say any of those things. You can't say she's a mutant either. But it was like, oh wow, okay, how do we get there? And it was just interesting that it took her, to have like this near death experience for her to, start kind of developing these powers. But one thing about that first time she almost drowned that was funny is you see like the pee and Pepsi fly by her in the little vision that's being had.
And it ain't the last time you see fucking Pepsi.
It ain't the last
either.
time.
Shit. In case you missed it, let's have a whole set piece at the fucking Pepsi Cola sign in New York.
Sponsored by. It's crazy. They even hand her a Pepsi at like the little barbecue, Mike Epps. Yes. I don't know. It was crazy, bro. I was like, this is ridiculous. I don't know. Pepsi was really paying these people. It's kind of like, it's almost like Pepsi's paying them so much they'd rather have a bad movie than Pepsi not to be in this movie at all. Like it was that crazy. But yeah, man, I thought she was funny. I also think that it was weird seeing her. I have to speak on it now. I guess it kind of goes with the other three girls too, but it almost felt like they did this backwards. It shouldn't have been called, even if it was called Madam Web, she should have been, the movie just should have started with the girls having their powers and her being a mentor to them in the beginning. Like that just should have been how the movie existed from the get-go. Instead it was like, okay, but it's like, how do we get Madam Web to Madam Web? And we literally spend like an hour and 45 minutes until we figure out what the hell is gets her to get to be Madam Web. And so, it's the part at the end where she got hit by some rubble. I don't know how she became blind in the end. Like I was watching, like it was like a bottle. She got hit by a bottle rocket in the water, bro, and like and she became blind. I was like, oh, that's how she becomes blind. Versus like, there's something different about already just being born blind. You know what I mean? That's like a whole nother dynamic to your life that you have. And so, yeah, very interesting choices being made with her character, man. But yeah, it was kind of weird seeing her operate.
Man, yeah, I think shit, I don't know what I think, honestly. I don't even know. I really don't know what to think about the performance, about the character. So I'll say this. I think the Madam Web character as a concept is a cool thing. Like, I like the character. I like the abilities. I like the implications of what it can mean. I like it even more when it ties into Spider-Man, but that's not the reality here. But I think it's a cool concept. And there were a couple of moments in the movie that felt like we were starting to unlock some potential where it's like, oh, that's interesting. I like how that looks. I think that could go somewhere. But just the whole roadmap to get to that place and get to that point, and the way that they visually kind of cued us to her powers, and just like the overall feeling of it was just so disjointed to me. Like, one of the things that frustrated me the most about the movie was when she gains these powers and when she can start to see the future, like the editing of it was so sloppy. Like, I was actively getting frustrated. Like, what the fuck am I watching? Like, are we in the past, or are we in the future, or are we in the present? Like, what are we seeing here? Like, that whole sequence on the subway that just plays over and over and over again.
Man.
I'm just like, okay, we get it. Like, she sees Tahar Rahim, she sees Ezekiel come in, and like, we're just going back and forth, and the sound design was just turned up to a fucking 12 for no reason. It was loud and obnoxious. I hated the editing of it. I really didn't like it. When it was a little bit more subtle earlier on, like when she's at her apartment and the pigeon hits her window, couple of small things, like, okay, yeah, something's like off with her. But by the time we got on the train and she meets the other three girls, it was just like, this is kind of infuriating right now. Like, this is not visually coherent in a way that makes me feel like, oh, I'm getting it. I'm understanding like what's happening here. It's like, yeah, I understand it, but you were kind of really annoying and obnoxious in the way that you're editing it. It just feels like a fucking mess. It feels like you can't make up your mind on how you want to visually display this in your movie. So I didn't like that. To go to Dakota Johnson's performance look, I don't know, man. I think she's an interesting actor. I'll say that about Dakota Johnson. She's a really interesting actor that's had like an interesting career. Like, of course, she's a part of Hollywood royalty. She comes into the industry from birth. Essentially, her parents have been actors for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But she's made some interesting choices throughout her career. I don't know how to really categorize her. Like, I like her in certain things. I like her in the one scene that she's in The Social Network. That's practically her film debut. She's good in that one scene.
Mm-hmm.
I liked her in the Suspiria remake, but maybe because like she kind of has to give a disengaged performance in that. She kind of has to be dry and not present really. The Peter Butter Falcon, I don't really remember if I liked her in that or not. It was such a long. I haven't seen it in a long time, but she might have been okay in that. Decent movie, But I think a lot of people are having this question, like, is she even a good actress? Like, is she actually good or talented? I wouldn't necessarily go as far as to call her bad. I don't think she's bad by any means. I think that she kind of operates in a lane that she knows that she can excel at, which is a very, again, disengaged, kind of depleted. Like, I can kind of be reserved in my performance here. I don't have to give a ton of emotion, which maybe is why she's kind of a brilliant casting choice for this role and for this movie, because this often felt like a very disengaged movie. And so perhaps that's kind of brilliant from her standpoint. But again, she just kind of is there and present. And I think that more emotion could have been injected into the character, especially as she starts to develop this relationship with these three young girls. Like, there could be a lot of emotion there in terms of like found family and this idea of like finding others that are somewhat similar to you, come from maybe broken homes, don't really have people that they can relate to. They have a couple of moments where they kind of talk about that, like particularly in the motel scene when she's teaching them CPR. But it gets railroaded by some goofy shit. Like when they're just like switching off doing the CPR, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now switch. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're doing so great, Anya. You're doing so wonderful. It's just like, and yeah, I'm like, what are we doing? This is so bad. It's so fucking
She was
terrible.
like, nah.
It's like, yo, you can't even allow yourself to get swept up in that moment, because it's just like, okay, they're gonna give us some really bad dialogue or a really cringy moment to just take you completely out of it. So yeah, I don't know, but I guess to the point of like Cassie and Madam Web, and this kind of transitions into the other three characters. But what did you think about her role, I guess, as a mentor? A large part of the movie is the fact that she kind of has to look out after these three girls after they find out that Ezekiel is just trying to kill them, trying to hunt them down and track them down. What do you think about her, sort of taking that role as being the leader of the group? She is a little bit older. She's in her 30s. They're supposed to be teenagers. She has to watch them. They're obviously not listening. There's that back and forth. And they spend most of the movie really running. They just kind of run the whole movie. It's a lot of running. But what did you think about just how they displayed that relationship between those four?
Man, also it did still just feel disjointed. I think one thing she kind of gets right about the character of Madam Web. Madam Web's not really a hero or a villain, right? In the Spider-Man realm, she just kind of exists as a clairvoyant, like you said, as like this entity. But she is like a little bit of an asshole. Like even Madam Web in the comic is like a little bit of an asshole. So she kind of gets that part right. But it's also like that moment where she kind of just leaves them in the woods. Like she was like, all right, I'll be back in 3 hours. I was like, we just gonna leave these girls, these teenage girls, in the woods by themselves for 3 hours, like
in the New Jersey woods at that.
In the new, like the decision making. I just thought you had to be smart to be an EMT. You know what I'm saying? Like I thought you had to be like smart and responsible to save lives. You know what I mean? And she's like doing the opposite. Like I feel like as an EMT, you wouldn't leave three girls in the woods by themselves, no matter what the situation was. I thought you would find another way around that. So that stuff was kind of weird. But again, as decent as all the girls were doing too, there was just so much stuff that was cringy between her and the girls. We were just talking about Maddie and the high five thing. Maddie was like, nah, I'm not doing the high. And it's funny because like we felt like that watching it. We was like, nah, bro. Like we not, this is so corny. We are not doing that. But it's also the part at the end of the movie where the doctor goes, oh, are these people related to you? She's like, yeah, these are all my family, or whatever she said. She's like, these are my girls. I was like, I cannot. They're all mine. I can't. It was just so many weird moments. But I think kind of, I wish I seen the relationship that she was trying to give the three girls similar to the relationship that she was trying to give to Spider-Man, which was more like it was more guidance, right? Where here it didn't necessarily felt like guidance. It was just like, follow me because I can keep you safe, if that makes sense. It wasn't like navigating life kind of advice, kind of type things. It was like, I can keep you safe. Let's everybody follow me, follow the leader, and nothing that really felt too meaningful. And so yeah, it was another weird cringe thing to kind of watch between them. Though, to be honest, that was probably the most endearing parts of the movie, right? Is when they're all together. And so yeah, it was really weird.
I'm really confused at how any of the three girls, Julia, Anya, Maddie, would willingly partner up with fucking Cassie after she ditched them twice. Twice in this movie. She left
Two
them in the
times.
fucking New Jersey woods, and then after they escaped that scenario, she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Peru. Like I gotta go to Peru. I have to go like now." She catches a same day flight to fucking Peru. How did she pull that off? I don't know,
Impressive.
but that's crazy to me that they would just willingly like want to be her partner after she did that to them. Like, yeah, she got you out of a jam the first time. She found you on the train, and she prevented Ezekiel from killing you. But none of y'all knew what was happening in that moment. But she clearly showed, like, yeah, we dished y'all twice. The reason that they stuck around is because she's the one that can see the future. She has the ability that can ultimately get them out of this situation. But beyond that, I'm like, yo, you're kind of sketchy in terms of somebody that's like supposed to have my back or supposed to look out for me. I don't know. That just didn't really make that much sense to me. But I did find that when they were together, the movie worked better. Like when they all four were together, because you at least get them, you get them acting off of each other. You get to see that dynamic, sort of develop. But all the characters kind of have like one personality trait. Like they're all just like one thing. There's not really any depth to any of them. Like Julia, Sydney Sweeney's character, is just like supposed to be this shy, reserved girl, and it's like you got Sydney Sweeney to play that girl. Really, Sydney Sweeney, fucking maybe one of the hottest young actresses right now. She's supposed to play against type and be the odd, shy, reserved girl. Get the fuck out of here. Maddie is like the spoiled one, the one that has a lot of money. Anya's kind of the tough, the rough around the edges version, but they don't really go anywhere else beyond those one character traits for each person. So it's like, how deep can this relationship amongst these four really go when we don't know a ton and we don't get to see a ton take shape and we don't get to see a lot of the changes that they may go throughout this movie because of these experiences. And so I'm trying to apply like fucking physics level thinking to kindergarten level writing, but it is what it is. It's one of those things where it just bothered me throughout the entire movie. I do think that Dakota, despite what I'm saying, had a couple of good moments. Like the moment at the baby shower when she is like seeing the visions of the future. I actually thought that was delivered really well, where they're all looking at her crazy, like, yo, like, what's wrong with you? Why? Like, something's off. Like, I actually thought that her delivery in that scene, it felt like she knew exactly the movie that she was in. She was using some of those romantic comedy chops in that scene, the awkward, sort of chemistry or lack thereof between these other women who were there for the baby shower. I like that scene. The one joke of like her trying to spider walk up a wall, I guess it was fine, and the dog stuff, but it's like, okay. So there were a couple of moments where I'm like, there's potential here. You might have a laugh out of me, but beyond that, a lot of it's really bad because, again, just not a ton to work with. But speaking of the other three, I guess we can start with Sydney Sweeney's character, Julia Cornwall. Now this is supposed to be probably the biggest of all these characters, a future Spider-Woman. This is like a full-fledged Spider-Woman. They did change her name in this movie. It's Julia. Is it Julia Carpenter? Carpenter in the comics. So they changed it slightly, but whatever. This is supposed to be a future Spider-Woman. So I think and I imagine that Sydney Sweeney probably, she probably saw the script for this movie, and Sony were like, you get to be Spider-Woman. This is why you should do it. And that's probably why she signed up for it, because I don't really see any other reason to do this. She doesn't need it. But what did you think about her, what she brought to the movie, and just her dynamic with the other girls?
I mean, she didn't have much to do, right? I think another problem with the dynamic between the other girls is, again, they all seem to be bonding by circumstance and not bonding by bonding, if that makes sense. There wasn't enough character moments for us to say, oh wow, you're shy in this way. What about, have you tried this? Oh man, I used to be shy because blah blah blah. Oh man, you know what, Maddie, you're really right about that. Oh yeah, they never really bond because they really talked about their experiences with each other. They trauma bonded, which is, well, not You know what I mean? Not the real trauma bonding, which is way different, but they bonded over trauma. How about that? They bonded over trauma with their parents. And again, they bonded because of circumstance. And so, you know, Julia, she was just a shy girl who her parents weren't around, and that was true for the other two. Their parents just weren't around, and here we are. Because in fact, the only time that we really get them alone with each other for real to like spend time with them, they decide to go to the diner when they're in the woods. You know what I mean? It's like that's one of the only real times that they get to. And even then, they're like, it's like a what 3 minute walk to the diner that we see them. What do we have to say, you know, about them? We really don't have much. We don't get much out of them or have much to say about them. I will say, I'm gonna say this about all three girls too. The little vision that we do see with their suits, I thought they all looked pretty cool. I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. You know what I mean? I was like, those are decent suits. They look good in the suits. Maddie had her hair. Sydney had it looked good. I thought it was fine, but we never get to see any of it. You're telling me you go from this shy girl to Spider Woman, like this cool ass, supposed to be sexy looking with the hair flowing Spider Woman, like that's supposed to be you, the one from Secret Wars. Come on, bro. Like you gotta. We don't even know how we get there, and I'm gonna speak way more about that later with Ezekiel. But like, it's just very. I don't know. There's just not much dynamic to their characters and what they actually got the potential or what they actually got to do in this movie. It really was legit all about Madam Web, and that's it really took away from the movie.
Yeah, it really kind of makes you wonder. I mean, a part of me can kind of understand, like, well, yeah, we're gonna do a Madam Web movie, but we need a little bit more because like Madam Web is very much bare bones. So let's throw in some Spider Women to help support that. So I can kind of understand that decision making, but to then do nothing with them and to tease us to the parts that we want to see and then never get there, and ultimately we're never going to get there because this movie will not have a sequel at all. It's kind of just baffling to me because it's like, yo, if you just gave me the movie of them in their suits and them like fighting crime, at least for half of the movie or something, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
like let's just get to the fucking point, you know? And I think
Yep.
that's kind of like the disjointed origin of this movie to begin with because they're calling it Madam Web. All right, well, let's throw in like three other Spider Women. Well, you know you're not going to have enough time to give them proper origins, and so now we have to create this weird like we're going to mostly learn about Cassie Webb, but we're going to pair her up with these other three women who potentially will become future Spider people. We're going to try to build this out slowly, and it's just like I I just don't. What is this movie then? It's just like girls running from a guy who's trying to fucking kill them. That's what the movie is. Like
That's it.
this is not a superhero movie. It's just girls running from a creepy dude. You know, and it's just
That's
like
it.
I, when you bring in Sydney Sweeney, who has such star power behind her, so much momentum behind her, and you see the actual character that they gave her, it's like you didn't need Sydney Sweeney for this movie. You could have got anybody. Anybody could
Anybody.
play that role. Why get somebody? Why get somebody who is so popular at this point? I guess it's just to put butts in seats to try to get people to come to it, but it just feels like a waste because the role is severely underwritten that you can't even do anything with the talents of Sydney Sweeney. And I do believe she's talented. She's really showcasing a lot of different variety in the roles in the movies that she's taking, but this just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't do anything for her. And it's not believable, and they just don't take it anywhere to make you really connect with her or the other three. I guess we could talk about Isabella Merced as Anya. She is also coming from somewhat of an abandoned household, but she's homeless essentially. But her father has been deported, and her mother's not around as well. I think she died when she was younger, like 5 years old, is what she said in the movie. So she's also coming from somewhat of a broken home to some extent, but her connection to Cassie is that they live in the same apartment building in New York, and so they recognize each other, and they somehow all end up on that train when they discover each other. But Isabella, it's interesting because she's gonna be in James Gunn's Superman movie. She's
Yep.
gonna be Hawk Girl, so
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll have a good redeeming performance there because this isn't gonna go anywhere. But how did you feel about her particular character and what she brought to the dynamic of the group?
I have to talk about that. What you just said. She lived in the same apartment building as Cassie, and something this movie I hated the idea, I think, of coincidence in this particular way with these four characters. It was like Oh yeah, you flipped me off today. Oh man, I live in your building. What? No, that's crazy. It was just like, this is the writing. Like that's what we're doing. Just coincidence. That is the late. That's the. It might be the laziest way to write anything. I can make a story right now and tell you, yep, these two characters met because of coincidence. Isn't that like the laziest thing you ever heard? It's so crazy. But that's what they did with these characters. That was so weird to me. But man, Anya Corazon, another really cool Spider-Man. She had like a really cool run, called I think Aranya, and it was just a really dope run. But she becomes Spider Girl at some point. But yeah, another really cool Spider. And they we would never know. I think another thing about all three of these characters, that even though I think they could have made this movie with all three of these girls without having to do complete origins, right? That without having to do, oh man, you have this whole backstory, you have this whole. I don't think they had to do that, but I think what would have been interesting is if they had personality to show us why their spider is different from each other, but we would never know because we didn't get any of it. Why is why is in this particular story, why is her dad being deported so interesting to potentially her future spider? To me, talk about that. Oh man, she's gonna be a spider in the future. Okay, cool. What about her heritage? What about her dad being deported? What about her not wanting to be deported? It's interesting to her potential future self. I wouldn't know because they don't do the work, and so man, it's just really sad. To Yeah, it's just really sad to see again these cool spider people, because there's a lot of them. That's what makes the Spider Verse so cool, is because they're not just like, a lot of these people aren't just like one off. You have a name and a look and that's it. These people have stories and comic books and story. It's crazy. And then you put them in this movie and it's like, no, y'all really just got costumes and a name. Like that's all y'all got. And so yeah, it's just really weird, man. But she did what she had to do. I actually do like the concept of her being down in that way, of representation of her dad being deported. I wish they could get more like, I guess, I don't know if political is the word, but a little more upfront and be like, no, this organization got my father deported, and so now I don't want to get deported. I wish it could have been more forward in that way, man. But yeah, I wish she wasn't reduced to like the girl that lived in the apartment, because that's kind of what it felt like to me. Is she felt like the girl that lived in an apartment, and now hey, she knows the girl from upstairs whose mail is always on the whatever she said. She always leaves her junk mail on the thing. That's the most I know about her. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like her whole character. So yeah, it sucks, but that's what they gave us.
Yeah, she's kind of the strict one of the group. She's the one that's not really down with like, oh yeah, let's go to the diner. She's like, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we shouldn't draw attention to ourselves because she just told us to like lay low. So she's the one that has a little bit more sense than the other two, because Julia is just gonna go with the fucking flow. She's just gonna do whatever. And Maddie is just like bullish and just wants to have fun. She's like, I'm trying to eat. I'm hungry. So let's go eat. Fuck,
I got money.
I got money. Fuck what she said. Like, let's go eat. And Anya is the one that's like, well, maybe we shouldn't, but you know, she doesn't really provide much resistance to the idea of going to the diner. She just kind of gives up and goes with them because I guess she's hungry too, which is fair. But yeah, just not a ton to really do or work with. I think that, you know, when you have somebody who comes from, you know, the situation where her father's being deported, and then she runs into Cassie, like there is some interesting stuff that you can do there with how that informs who she becomes as a hero, and what type of hero she becomes. But they can't really ever go there, or they choose not to, just because again we are in the midst of being chased down in the entire movie. There's not often moments for just those story beats to really unfold and take shape. You know, I think that Woods, you know, scene of them being alone was kind of the opportunity, or at least if they went to the diner, they could have just taken some moments to have a conversation amongst those three.
Instead, they dancing on the table.
They're dancing on the table to Toxic. It's like, well, that's why we said it in 2003, because we really want to play Toxic by Britney Spears. That's the reason. But it's like, no, take this moment to flesh out the characters. Tell us more. Expand what we know about them. Dive in. Like, and then also, I think even more importantly, create that connection amongst each other. Because, like, yeah, girls dancing and having fun together, like, yeah, that's one way they can bond, but it would be all the more impactful if they can bond through just like having conversation and building trust with one another and just talking about that stuff. But they're too pre-concerned with just like being goofy and showcasing like how irresponsible they are. And it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
what's the rush here? Like if we're here and we're trying to invest in them to begin with, then take the opportunity to do so. But they don't do any of that. I guess that brings us to Maddie. Her character trait, she is kind of somewhat of a brat, but she is wealthy, or at least her parents are. She comes from a wealthy family. But the parents are absent. They're always traveling. They're not around. And I guess she would be the least responsible of the three because she doesn't really want to listen to Cassie. She doesn't want to listen to any of the advice. She's also the one like of the three when Cassie first finds them on the train. She's the one that's like, yo, like, who is this person? You're trying to kidnap us? Like, what's going on here? So she's really not down with this whole journey that they're going to go on together. And so I guess eventually she has to come around. But what did you think about her and her role and how, I think she's probably responsible for a lot of the headaches that they ultimately had to deal with just because of her weird, wild decision making throughout the movie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, she is the wild one, man. Like you said, Anya, her being the more, because I remember in the car, Anya, she was the one talking that science. Remember? And so Maddie, in some ways, kind of felt like, I don't know if the inverse is the right word, but definitely the rebel, in the group. Definitely the one that's like, oh yeah, no, I'm hungry. Let's go eat. I got money. I can do whatever I want, kind of when I want. Attitude that she has. She is the skater girl. And what's funny, that's the way they get off of the train. Is Cassie just kind of takes her skateboard and walks off the train and holds it. It's funny if you like think about how long the skateboard was in Cassie's hands, like in the movie,
Long time.
like her holding it away. I was like, she still has it in her hand. She looked at Ezekiel like 10 times before she ever gave her that skateboard.
Like, Maddie,
Look
choke this fucking girl and get your skateboard back. Put your hands around her neck and get this. She's not even paying attention to you right now.
We know in New York that would have not went down like that. It wouldn't even been close to the way that went down. Everybody was being so civil in that moment. I was like, this is a little too clean for me. Like, are we okay? Like, what's going on here?
I can't reach. Oh my god.
Give me my.
She's so much taller than me.
Give me my skateboard back. I just feel like a rebel skateboard girl, black skateboard girl, would have smacked that white woman upside the head and got her skateboard back. Like, it just wouldn't have went down like that. There's just no way. But Maddie, man, I think it's so weird because they all had potential to be interesting. We just didn't get enough of them because there is something with the snotty, kind of bratty and bully, one of the group who she feels like she has like so much leadership qualities to her. You know what I mean? Even though she is the way everybody went to the diner though. You know what I mean? Like everybody danced on the table when Toxic came on because of Maddie's lead. And so it's so interesting because I feel like I just wish we would have gotten more. But also I did want to point out the vision we do get to see her in her suit, which by the way, Maddie in the comics is the niece of J. Jonah Jameson, I'm pretty sure. They give her this fro, and the fro was fire. It was almost like
the natural hair with the costume.
Yeah, I'm so mad. They showed us like low key like 3 really good costumes, and we got them for like 35 seconds. It is so crazy. But yeah, Maddie looked really good in her costume as well. And Maddie Franklin also, she has the spider arms, right? Kind of like the Iron Spider looking spider arms, which is dope as well. So yeah, man, that's really all I got to say. Again, all 3 of them, a lot of potential. I think, there's some basis there, but they all end up being pretty one-dimensional by the end of the movie.
Yeah, she had probably my favorite costume of the 3. Like, they all looked great, but I love the look and
hers was fire.
Hers was fire. The colors were really good. Like the way that they used the blue as the dominant color compared to the red, and then she had the Iron Spider legs, her hair. I'm like, oh, it looks so good. It's so much potential in what you could do here. I want to see that fucking movie. Like, why am I watching these girls running away in New Jersey or dancing to Toxic when I could be watching them on Spider Adventures? Like, we don't even get like a single web sling in this movie. Not a single web sling. I could have used
Not
like just like
one.
one of those, just like one thwip. We didn't get that. But you know, be that as it may, like, you know, she is different from the other two, and again, Celeste O'Connor, she plays it. She tries to do what she can, you know, with it. I think that she's a young, talented actress, you know, who's done some decent work. She's also in the Ghostbusters, you know, movies. Going to be in that new one that comes out. She's cool, but you know, again, just not a ton to do, so it's hard to really grade it or judge it in that respect. You know, I think collectively, like all four of these actresses, like I like them individually. I think that they could work well under the context of a better movie that's designed to do more with their characters individually and as a collective. But we don't get
Yeah.
that. We just got we kind of get, you know, a lot of ridiculous things. But you know, Maddie, you know, she just. I mean, that's just such a fucking boneheaded decision to go to the go to the diner. Okay, like go get some food. I get that you're out there starving in the middle of nowhere. Fine. But let's draw more attention to ourselves. We see a group of boys at a table. Let's go fucking dance on top of the table. It's toxic. Like, what more attention can we get? And then this random guy, he notices you all from the newspaper that he's reading, so he gets on the fucking payphone, calls up the authorities. That triggers Ezekiel, and here we are. We're in a situation that could have been prevented. She doesn't do that really boneheaded shit, and you know, okay, teenager, whatever, but still, like one of those things where it's just like that's too convenient, that's too easy. Like we could have done something more interesting. It's just like there's other ways to go about that type of character beat or that type of sequence that you want to set up in terms of him finding them. But that is what it is. I guess we got to get to the moment and talk about Ezekiel Sims in this movie. Boy, I don't even know where to begin, but you know, this is Tahar Rahim's character. We've circled him a lot, obviously, because he is the driving force really of the movie. And you know, we see early on, well, we see him at the beginning of the movie. The movie does start off with a flashback with him essentially kind of betraying Cassie's mother, you know, with this research team that's in Peru, and he's able to gain these enhanced abilities of these spiders, these magic spiders. So he's kind of a clairvoyant himself, and because of that, he sees visions, and the visions that he sees are the ones that we've alluded to. We see the three Spider Women. They're older. They're in their costumes. They're probably fully fledged superheroes at this point, and they kill him. And essentially that becomes his motivating factor to why he wants to kill them. That becomes the entire movie. He finds out that he's going to be killed. Now I must find them, track them down, and kill them myself before they can do it to me. That's really all we're given. And we're kind of off at that point for the Ezekiel Sims character and the role that he plays here. So yeah, man, let's just start off. I'm sure there's a lot to get to. There's a lot to address with Ezekiel. But opening thoughts on his character and what he brought to the movie.
Ooh wee. There's like different kinds of bad, right? There's a bad to this movie where like I wasn't mad, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, I expected it to be like this. Like, oh, it's just bad. You know what I mean? Like I'm watching it, I'm laughing because of the cringe every now and then. But every time Tahar Rahim as Ezekiel was on the screen, I actually wanted to like throw something because it made me upset. And usually I don't get upset when things are that bad. But it was knowing Ezekiel Sims as a character, seeing how Tahar Rahim was playing this character, there was so much. I was just like, we cannot be serious, but we very much are. Oh man, this whole thing with Ezekiel was unserious. I'm just going to start from the character point of view, I guess. Ezekiel. So in the beginning, you said, remember, he's with not Maddie, Cassie's mom. They're in whatever jungle. I forgot what country they're in. What country do you remember? Peru. That's it. They're in Peru researching these spider people, and he decides to shoot everybody for this one spider to get the powers. Why? Why couldn't he just wait till they got back to the States to like do all this violence? I could not wrap my head around why you would do it in the village where the spider people exist, where everybody is on this tour thing together, trying to research these things. You just go back and then do your dirty bidding when there's like one person around. That I couldn't wrap my head around that. Part one. Part two, Ezekiel Sims as a character, y'all. So in the comics, we actually don't really know still how he like legit got his powers, but we know he went under some ritual in somewhere and got powers just like Spider-Man. He pulls up to Spider-Man and is like, look, Spider-Man, I know who you are. I got powers just like you. But what's important about his character design is that he never has shoes on. That's like his thing. That's how he can climb walls, right? Spider-Man climbs walls. That's what he does. Spider-Man can do it with a suit on. Ezekiel Sims does it with bare feet. And you can see in the movie that when you first see him like in the train place, that he has no shoes on. Oh, that he's being Ezekiel. He has to have no shoes on because that's how he can climb shit. And then he has a suit on and he can still climb stuff. I am what? So wait. So what was the point of him being barefoot in the first place if he could just climb because the suit covers his feet? What are we doing? What does that mean? What's the point of now not wearing a suit? Wouldn't you just wear the suit all the time? If you could just climb shit all the time?
Should have just showed up in the suit, probably.
Should just showed up.
Let's just start there.
In the suit. That shit was crazy. A spider-looking suit at that. Whatever that's about. I don't know what that is either. That is not true to whatever.
What was the point of that, by the way? Like, why have a suit that clearly resembles that of Spider-Man? It's just dark. It's just like a darker black suit with the red webbing, I guess, around it. But that also was really just like strange. I don't know if they just like the iconography of it. Like, we want to get something that kind of looks like Spider-Man, but not Spider-Man. Like, it's Spider-Man adjacent, something close to that. But that just felt just like fucking nonsense. Like, it was unnecessary to have that in there.
Nonsense. It would have been cool if Spider-Man could be in this movie, or the concept of Spider-Man could be in this movie, that people thought that was Spider-Man, and that like, oh shoot, Spider-Man is doing bad shit.
That would have been good. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, oh shoot, Spider-Man, what is Spider-Man doing bad shit? Is he a villain now all of a sudden? I thought that would have been cool, but that didn't happen either. What else? Oh, this dude Ezekiel is so crazy, man. The things that he was doing. Oh my God. Okay, we already talked about it, but his whole motivation is so crazy to me, because what are you doing? Not only does he not do, come to the conclusion of the reason why the girls kill you at all. You tell me these 3 girls in your dreams decide to kick you out of your apartment building? How? Why? What is the reason? We never know. The whole movie, we never know what could possibly lead these 3, which technically are they're heroes eventually, right? These 3 heroic women kick you out of your apartment. He never did the research to figure out what he did, why they would kick him out, none of it, bro. It's just kind of a thing that exists. That's his whole motivation. They kill me in my dreams, I'm gonna go kill them in real life. That is nuts to me, bro. That is absolutely nuts. There's no anything there.
By the way, he also said in the movie, when we saw the dream, he said, oh, I've been having this dream. It's been the same dream over and over. I've had this reoccurring dream. Really? So now you decided to take action on it. And now all of a sudden it's become a priority for you because like now you want to make a move and do something about it. Well, if you've been having this dream for who knows how long, which they also don't tell us, why haven't you done something about it already? If you're so motivated to kill these girls before they kill you, what's the driving force to get you up out the fucking bed right now to go kill these girls? That was also just like they didn't explain that. They didn't do anything with that.
They didn't explain it. Why now? Why now? If you've been having it, you technically by him not doing anything about it, he should have been dead.
Oh,
he could have.
The babies, kindergarten. I'm showing up to your fucking kindergarten right now. We're gonna finish this before you ever get a chance to grow up. Like I'm not even chancing how long it's gonna take.
Not even chancing, bro. He could have been gone. It is so nuts, man. But Ezekiel as a character, this is my final thoughts on Ezekiel, bro, because he pisses me off. I'm not saying no more. It's a really cool Spider-Man character, y'all. Like really fucking cool. Like again, he goes to Spider-Man, say I have these powers. He has a lot to do with Cindy Moon. He literally is the person who locked up Cindy Moon for years. Which, by the way, Cindy Moon and Peter Parker were bitten by the same spider. Literally, like almost right after each other at the same time. But Ezekiel locked up Cindy Moon, and it's just a lot of cool shit with Ezekiel Sims. And they turn him into some weird shit in this movie, weird motivations. He's not really a villain either, actually. In Spider-Man lore, he's not really a villain. They turn him into a villain in this movie for whatever reason. He didn't have to be named Ezekiel Sims is my point I'm trying to get you here. There's no reason for this character to be named Ezekiel Sims if they literally brought over nothing from his original character except for he has spider powers That could have been any old character that they decided to come up with. And Ezekiel, again, to his character design, is usually barefoot, which he was barefoot for all of the 3 minutes climbing on top of that train. When that's it. This character had no reason to be named Ezekiel Sims, and it makes me mad because now it like prolongs us ever potentially seeing Ezekiel Sims in some good shit. You know what I'm saying? Like they could have used him for real. Like Ezekiel, Madam Web, and Spider-Man have really cool connection with each other and a really cool story that goes down. Read it. It's phenomenal. It makes you rethink everything the way Spider-Man got bit by the spider. It's like, oh shit, that's crazy. So yeah, he annoys me. And then, last thing, from an actor perspective, we already talked about it, but I did not like his performance. You already talked about it too. The ADR was absolutely atrocious. It wasn't good. There was almost nothing about this character being in this movie or on the screen that I liked or appreciated. I was never happy that he was here. I was never excited to see him. In fact, I was probably mad the entire time that he even existed in this film. And he should have just been named something else that was not Ezekiel.
I can't really add anything else. I was mostly even beyond all that stuff. I was just really, I just couldn't believe that this $80 million production had made it to the big screen with such amateur level filmmaking with the ADR. Like that really, really bothered me. So many scenes because it's almost every line delivery that he gives in the movie. Like it's almost every scene that he's in, and it's not even like obvious. Like there are other movies where I can notice that there's ADR, like they'll cut away and you won't see a person talking. You'll be focusing on the, you're like, okay, yeah. Sometimes it's unavoidable and you need that. But there's literally scenes in this movie where he's talking and the motion and movements of his lips don't even match what he's saying. Like it's clearly not the same shit, which just makes you wonder how much changed throughout the course of this movie. How much did they go back and have to surgically alter and change, and like what was initially supposed to be there versus what we ultimately ended up with. It was just like so glaringly obvious that it really takes you out of the movie. It's the equivalent of like terrible CGI that we've pointed out with other films where it's like, yo, that's just so bad where it's like you almost don't even care what's happening in front of you because I can't take my attention off of how glaringly bad something is because the right amount of time wasn't given to it or whatever. There's some sort of miscommunication. I don't know what it is, but like stuff like that, it's just not acceptable on this level. It makes you think that this is like a CW production. Like we're dealing with something that's supposed to be on TV, not like a big budget theatrical movie. And so that pissed me off. And then all the other stuff, it just doesn't make any sense. He's just like a terrible nothing villain that is going to be forgotten about. I mean, I forgot about him as soon as I left the theater. I was like, well, who was that? Who was that guy? What did he really want? Like he is the nothingness of what this movie is supposed to be. Like just a guy chasing girls down throughout the course of the film. And it's just like, yo, why do I give a fuck about any of this stuff? They could have at least, I think with the whole outfit that they gave him and the choreography, they could have at least gave him some moments of like really dope kick-ass stuff, like the choreography, the fight stuff. Like we get a glimpse of it when he first finds them in the subway train and he beats down the police officers, but it's edited badly, so you don't really see shit. Then he gets hit by an ambulance from Cassie. Like she drives out of a parking garage.
Oh yeah, that was kind of crazy.
That's some Vin Diesel Fast and Furious shit.
It was. That was kind of nuts.
The theater fucking erupted. Like, what? She just drove an ambulance out of a parking garage to run this motherfucker over. Like, the precision that it would take to even know that he's there is ridiculous to me. Like, how do we make sense of that? That's some Fast X shit right there. But they did it. It is what it is. But we don't even get like any cool fight choreography with him. We don't even see anything that's like, yo, he's formidable. He's like really fucking scary. To 3 teenagers, of course he's scary. Of course they're going to run away from him. Like, you're fucking weird, bro. But us as an audience that sees 6, 7, 8 superhero movies a year, like, this is a jabroni at best. He's a jobber at best. Like, he can't stack up to anybody. If you put him in a fight or a contest with any other Spider person, he's getting the fucking floor mopped with him in the way that they depict him here. But there is so much more potential in what they could have did with Ezekiel because they're individualistic, cool character traits that you don't need any of the shit that they put in this movie. Like, he could exist on his own from the character and from the origins within the comics. The stuff that they did here added nothing. It was no added value. It didn't make any sense. It was dumb. It didn't work at all. I do want to speak about too, like the shit with Peru. because his character ties in with that, like you said, the
Mm-hmm.
flashback. And then Cassie goes back to Peru. She makes that random choice and she runs into like the chief of the forest and she gets her abilities there. This can kind of lead us to the third act. We're going to wrap this shit up quick, believe me. But this leads to the third act. Like she goes back to Peru and she like, I guess, masters her abilities, her clairvoyant abilities. She goes through like several trials, and she's able to become a better clairvoyant because she's inexperienced at first, and then all of a sudden she becomes better. And then one of the most egregious lines I remember in the movie.
Oh, I know it.
It's the good old classic. We hear about responsibility and Spider-Man, and I mean we know the power of what that line could mean and how great it could work. Well, when Cassie goes back to the forest and she's about to leave from Peru, the chief of the forest, he tells her, when you take on responsibility, great power will come. Really? So we're gonna spin this again. We're gonna change it again for whatever reason. It's not gonna be the one but it's gonna be a slight variation on the line that you know. Sure, whatever. It's bad lines like that, bad execution like that. It just makes you wonder, like, yo, who wrote this? How are we doing this? How are we greenlighting shit like this?
It's so crazy.
How do you feel about that Peru sequence and her showing up? She goes into a cave, which is like, okay, we're in a cave now doing this shit. I don't even know what to make of it because at that point I was pretty much totally checked out of the movie. But any thoughts on just that sequence and the connections, I guess, to Ezekiel and how that sort of led us into the final moments of the movie?
One thing, another thing I remember being really bad convenience writing is right before we get to Peru, Cassie goes and finds her mom's book, right, with all the findings in it, and she's flipping through the pages, and she goes, "Oh, spider people," and that's the page that she needs. Is the is the spider people page. I lost it, bro. When I tell you this movie Loki is a comedy, it's an actual comedy, bro. I could not believe the book actually had spider people in it. I thought that was so funny, bro. But moving on to Peru, man, she gets there. Oh boy is like, I'm here. I told your mom I would always be here. So here I am. I'm like, damn, bro, you've been here long. Like, what if she never came back? That's kind of crazy.
Just waiting and waiting.
It's just waiting and waiting for the daughter to show up. One thing I do want to say, I think the concept that kind of the science stuff they were doing, I thought that was kind of cool actually. Like the concept that they use a spider to bite the mom to try to save her, and that's how Cassie got her powers. I was like, oh, I'm okay with that. But the moment right before that, where he literally Ancient One Doctor Stranged her, punched her out of her body.
Oh yes, I forgot about that.
Wow. Astral punched her was crazy. I'm like, there's not another way we could have done that wasn't the exact same. Like, it looked the exact same. It was the exact same CGI looking. Like, it was very flowy, ghosty.
Yeah, real big Casper energy in that moment.
Real big Casper. Like, we couldn't do something else that didn't feel like Doctor Strange. I thought that was an interesting choice, man. But yeah, it was that whole scene was real. It was a lot of cringe going on, and as soon as that line hit, I was like, we are unserious.
Oh, we're off the rails completely.
We are
the train is derailed at this fucking point.
When you take responsibility, great power will come, bro. I heard. I actually heard everybody in the audience groan. And I don't hear that in movies that much. Not like, it wasn't a groan like, I don't know. I've heard groans where like a moment happens and you're groaning because of the emotionally, like, right, because of the situation. They groaned out of cringe. They groaned. I heard, oh,
it's one of the
like, I actually heard it.
It's one of them old brother groans, like, oh brother, like this is what we're doing.
It was really an old brother moment, bro. Like, I've never rolled my eyes so hard at a movie like in my life, bro. Like, ever. But like you said, she goes back, and that's how we get into the third act. But that Peru scene was like, that's the moment I was like, no, we are really off the hinges here.
Yeah, it goes into another gear of awful, which is, it's hard to believe that we can start to regress even further. But that whole sequence was like, yep, yep, we are now entering into the D plus D minus echelon of terrible shit from superhero movies. Like, we're getting down to the fucking floor at this point, only to be capped off by a perplexing third act battle that takes place in you know, we live in New York, so we know the proximity of this stuff. It takes place at the Pepsi Cola sign, which I believe is over in Long Island City, you know, sort of adjacent to Queens. For what reason? There's not really a reason, truthfully, other than to get Pepsi into the movie one more time, as we have already pointed out. But that's the big action set piece. It almost feels like that, you know, they probably conceived of this scene. They probably said, like, yeah, we want to have a big battle. We got to have them face off and ultimately defeat Ezekiel. They wrote it up. They came up with it. They delivered it to Sony, and Sony said, "Oh, but wait, oh, you gotta fucking fit. You gotta fit Pepsi into this somehow. Pepsi has to make their way into this movie one more time, because we
At least
promised.
wants to act.
We promised them. We promised them product placement at least 4 times. So we got to figure this out. And they figured it out in New York, and they took, you know, had to take place at this particular place. You know, it was what it was. The one thing I did like about this scene, as disjointed and as confusing as it was, I did like when you ultimately see Madam Web's powers come to fruition. Visually, I thought that was kind of decent. I thought that was kind of cool when you see, like, the extensions of her. It is very reminiscent of Doctor Strange, but when you kind of see it come into shape, you know, in that scene, I was like, oh, interesting look there. Like, you visually can do a lot with that. But, you know, it's really just like girls falling off of scaffolding and avoiding the P's and the Pepsi sign, trying not to fucking die, and all of a sudden, like you said, somehow Cassie becomes blind. She gets hit by what? I don't know. Any quick thoughts on just that big action set piece at the end?
Man, fireworks was whooping Ezekiel's ass. The fireworks was getting that boy in, man. They had flares and fireworks going on. He didn't know what to do. That's kind of crazy. But to be honest, a lot of it for me was like, I didn't really know what was happening. Like, when they got to the rooftop, some of it felt incoherent to me. Like, I was like, is there a helicopter? Did somebody get hit by, I don't know. Like, stuff was just flying, bro. I was like, is that still fireworks? I was like trying to figure out some of the stuff that was happening there. But I agree, when you do see that moment, I'm like, okay, I don't know how she learned that fast. That was the interesting part. I'm like, damn, she learned that really fast, that she can do all this. But I did like seeing it, though. I was like, there's a power. Okay, we're doing something. We got some powers out of here. She's helping all 3 of them at the same time. She's multiple places at the same time. That's what Madam Web can do. That. That's some Madam Web shit there. I like that. So I agree, at least seeing some of that. But no, not much to add. Again, I've already said it. The Pepsi sign is insane. It's craziest product placement ever. And then I just wish it was more understandable, again, incoherent, of what happened to her eyes. Like, I was very clearly looking at the screen, and you can see her, like, maybe get hit by something really fast. But for both of her eyes to be out, that's not the, like, like, for us to get to the hospital with the wraps around her head, for us to get to that point, I didn't see that in the movie. And again, maybe I missed something. It happened very quickly, and it was dark and in the water. But yeah, this woman has had to be resuscitated one too many times. And it's just, like, one at the beginning, one at the end. It's like, dang, you need to teach everybody around you CPR if that's what your life is going to be like, because this is kind of crazy at this point. But yeah,
just nonsense. I a couple of other things I guess we should address. They're not really factors in the movie, but they are here, probably by way of studio notes. But Emma Roberts and Adam Scott do have parts in this movie. And Adam Scott plays Ben Parker. It's Cassie's partner, paramedic partner, but also friend. And Emma Roberts plays Mary Parker. She's Ben's sister-in-law, and she's pregnant in the movie. And there's that whole scene earlier on in the movie where they have the baby shower, and they're talking about the name. What are you going to name the kid? What are you going to name the kid? What are you going to name the kid? It's clearly, obviously supposed to be Peter Parker. There's been a big question about this movie and what universe it exists in, or what Spider-Man is it supposed to be really. A lot of back and forth. And earlier this year, big reputable scooper Jeff Snyder, he talked about that Sony initially had this movie set in the 1990s, but then they did reshoots and decided to actually set it into 2003, because initially the idea supposedly was to connect this to Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, which, if that was the case, you would need to set it in the early 90s to create events before his birth. However, they decided to go ahead and change direction, change course, and I guess give us the idea that this is supposed to be before Tom Holland Spider-Man. So you set it in 2003, which would make it, I guess, age appropriate for Tom Holland Spider-Man. I've also seen a couple of interviews with S.J. Clarkson, talking about, well, what Spider-Man is it supposed to be? Is it Toby? Is it Andrew? Is it Tom? I don't know if it really fucking matters at this point. Really, it kind of feels moot. But she said that Madam Web takes place in a universe all of her own. So I don't know if that's clearly just trying to point away from those other three actors and saying, like, this is this universe's own Peter Parker, not somebody we've seen before. But what did you think about, I guess, what they tried to do there, what they tried to signal there? Again, it's probably unlikely we'll ever fucking know, like, the truth of it, and we'll ever see it. But did that matter to you? Did it mean anything at all? Do you have any thoughts on potentially what Peter Parker version it might have been?
Nah, it doesn't matter. I don't think I cared. I could not see a world ever in the conception of this movie where Madam Web and whatever Spider-Man they chose were going to be on the screen at the same time. I never, because if that is not happening, I have really no reason to care. I think it's crazy because the whole movie they are playing this act of we can't say Peter. We can't say it. We cannot. That is, nope. Can't. In fact, sometimes this movie felt very disconnected from a lot of Spider-Man verse Hood. Like even at the diner, very small detail, but the newspaper that the guy finds the picture of the girls in, right? Like, oh, the girl. That's from the New York Times. The New York Times in Spider-Verse world is the Daily Bugle. Why is it the New York Times? You know what I mean? It's like stuff like that.
I think it did say Daily Bugle. Actually, I feel like it said Daily Bugle on there. I feel like I remember reading that.
No, bro, he got it from the New York Times. Unless they changed it.
I saw Daily Bugle somewhere in that movie. I think I really unless I was really fucking dreaming of a different movie. I really feel like I saw Daily Bugle. I don't know, but either way,
but yeah, it just felt disconnected in that way, and even the gall to come up here and be like, yeah, Ben Parker is crazy. They even make a joke about Ben Parker. I was like, is this, can they do that? Can they say that? Which is funny. I shouldn't feel like Sony is the people who owns the Spider-Verse is holding back. You know what I mean? Like I should feel like that watching Marvel movies that don't have Spider-Man in it. Like, oh, can they say that? You know what I mean? I should feel like that. But instead, it feels the other way around. So it's always been kind of weird. I think in that way, watching this movie of like, this all feels so disconnected. I don't know if any of this matters. And so I think one other thought I did have though was that if there was to be a Spider-Man that was connected, it's just a little weird that Madam Web is that close to the family. You know what I mean? I don't think that's ever been a thing. Like Madam Web knowing Ben Parker is like, whoa. This is a whole nother ball game because she knows who you are. Of course, you know what I mean? It's like, you don't even have to be Madam Web to connect those dots at that point. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. But yeah, I never really had too many thoughts about it. And I don't think it really matters.
Yeah, I mean, and also like, there's really no reason for this movie to be set in 2003 beyond that particular fact, beyond the fact that they just want to show like the pre-birth of Peter Parker. But beyond that, there's no real reason why this had to be a period piece, why it had to be set
toxic,
in 03.
bro.
Oh,
toxic, man.
I mean, shit. I guess we can greenlight any movie. If we're gonna put toxic in the movie, fuck it. Go ahead, be my guest. Like, why not? Great choice. But man, that was one of the things where I'm just like, all right, well, we're dancing around Peter Parker. We're dancing around this because what's strange is like, even in Morbius with the post-credit scene, which this movie has none of them, thank God. But in the Morbius post-credit scene, they try to insinuate a potential Sinister Six lineup, and they somehow they somehow get Michael Keaton's Vulture over into this universe. I guess, again, if we're presuming that it's different, which they have told us it's different because Venom ended up in the MCU universe. It wasn't his own. So they're often pointing to this thing that I'm sorry, it's never gonna happen. Like we're not really doing any of this that they're trying to build up to. Like we're not gonna make a Spider-Man movie where somehow, some way, all of these shit movies are gonna collectively come together to make a great movie. It doesn't feel likely to me. So I just don't understand the choice to keep like doling out these small things, these small like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's like the one Spider-Man tie-in. Yeah, we're gonna allude to Peter Parker, but never say his name. It's like it doesn't really fucking matter because like there won't be another one. There won't be a payoff. There won't be any Spider-Man of this universe because this universe is gonna. I feel like it's gonna tumble eventually at some point. But that was just like one of those things that just felt, again, just like another a studio choice. Like we got to fit it in. We got to figure it out. We got to tie it in somehow so people get it, so that they understand. But you know, we're often left with more questions than answers. That kind of brings us to the end of it. Again, there's no post-credit scenes. Cassie gets a costume. I guess that's like the big takeaway. You know, you tell an origin story for a superhero, they got to get a costume at the end. Any thoughts on the look? I mean, what they gave her, she had the red on, she had the glasses, she had the wheelchair, you know, she was all of a sudden had the full look at that point. Any thoughts on just like the look of Madam Web? If we were to ever see her again, is that a look that you were particularly fond of, that she was ultimately able to don at the end of the movie?
I ain't gonna lie, bro. I thought them sunglasses looked silly as hell. It's the way, I think it was the way it was like presented, or like the way she was like smiling. I don't know what it was, bro. It just felt wrong. It all felt wrong, and it all felt really silly. Like it felt campy. Like really, the whole last 10 minutes of the movie, from the hospital to the end, felt campy. The line delivery, her with them glasses on, it was like, I don't know about this. Like this is weird. I guess the wheelchair looked fine. The wheelchair looked fine, but yeah, I thought they would do something different with the eyewear. Maybe, I don't know. It could be the rest of the movie that made that moment feel like, nah, this ain't it. But regardless, I was like, nah, this ain't it. So yeah, she got the costume. It is what it is. At least as far as we can see it. Which is, again, is a little, it's a little sad, because another thing, the visual of Madam Web is that she looks really creepy. She's always tied to life support, and it always looks kind of really creepy, even though, again, she's not a villain really, although she's not really 100% a hero either. But she's always looked kind of like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about Madam Web, you know what I mean? But here she just looked too happy and a little bit too clean, I think, for me to be like, oh, that's Madam Web. It didn't feel like that at all. It was just like, oh, Dakota Johnson's in a wheelchair with some glasses on. That's cool. You know?
She was just sitting there smiling for like 3 minutes. Just like, what are you so happy about? What the fuck?
Smirking, bro. I was like, it is what it is. But yeah, it was cool, I guess.
You know, the best part about that scene, another great, excellent line delivery. I think it was the final line of the movie. She says, you know the best thing about the future? It hasn't happened yet. Really?
You don't say.
No shit. I didn't know that. Oh, wonderful line to end off this movie. I'm like, okay, all right, let's get the fuck out of this theater. There's no post-credit scenes. I'm running out the auditorium at this point because I can't take any more. I feel like I'm getting dumber and dumber the more I listen to this damn movie. It hasn't happened yet. Yo, they wrote that.
Brother.
This is a Hollywood script.
They wrote that down,
you know
bro.
how tough it is to write a script in Hollywood that gets bought and purchased and made into a movie, and this is acceptable. This is going on the big screen, y'all. This is gonna be in a movie. I can't believe it. But that's it. That's the end of Madam Web. Again, there's no post-credit scenes because I guess they figured, like, why bother? Why do anything more? We got so lambasted for that Morbius post-credit scene. We just can't bother ourselves to film another one. So as we wrap up here, first big question: where does it rank against the Sony Spider-Man movies? I can't even say that seriously because, like, what are we ranking? We're ranking shit against shit. But there's 4 movies, I guess: Venom, Let There Be Carnage, Morbius, and now Madam Web. Where will Madam Web fall for you amongst those 4 films?
It's second worst. I think Mobius is a slightly worse. I only say I laughed at Madam Web being cringy more. Does that make sense? Morbius was, I was just like, this cannot be it. Like somehow Madam Web, though, as bad as it was, I made it to the end, like at least with a couple laughs in me for it being cringe. The people I watched it with, like the theater, they were pretty funny, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you. Like they kind of had me laughing too. Cause there was moments I was like, this is crazy. And they would laugh and everybody would start laughing. I was like, yeah, no, this is funny. So because of that experience, it's slightly above Morbius for me. It's not like it's literally the bar is in the deepest depths of hell, but it is definitely ever so slightly better than Morbius.
Yeah, I can't disagree. Same thing here. As as bad as this movie is, I didn't necessarily have a bad time watching it
Yeah,
because of that
that's it.
experience. Because people in that theater, they knew this is a train wreck. Like we are on a train that is on the path of a fucking derailment, and we're just gonna enjoy it while we can, before it ultimately ends. And so yeah, it's the second worst. It's definitely after those Venom films. At least the Venom films. I mean, they know what they are, but you have a fully committed Tom Hardy,
Yes.
who's 100% in on the character and the mythos and the relationship between him and Venom, like the Eddie Brock dynamic. Like you at least get some great buddy comedy stuff out of that, as silly and as goofy as it can be. And not every joke works, but this one, it's like, yeah, you're laughing at the movie, not with the movie. And Morbius is just a fucking slog. It's boring and dry. The best part about Morbius is probably Matt Smith, who tries to go for it, but that's really the only saving grace for that film. And I guess the last thing that we can address here is really the future of Sony's Spider-Man universe, if there is a future. Because I don't know. I mean, what's really weird about this whole thing, we talked a lot of shit about them, but it's not like they don't have wins, because on one
Mm-hmm.
hand, they still have the relationship and the partnership with Marvel Studios, such an unprecedented thing in the history of Hollywood for two studios to share a character and to produce movies together that have been
Yeah.
hugely, hugely successful. We know that they're going to make another one with Tom Holland. Those are working. And I think that they're largely working because of the creative input from Kevin Feige and his team at Marvel Studios. They also have Sony Pictures Animation, which these Across the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse movies have been phenomenal. And they have one more that they're
Yep.
going to make. Those have been extraordinary achievements. Venom, again, also super financially, commercially successful property that has worked for them. There will be another one that's coming out this November. Outside of that, what's going to happen here? What's going to happen with the state of the Sony Spider-Man related characters? Craven is still on the way. That's coming out this August. Any early thoughts about that? Or any thoughts just about what should happen with the course of how they're handling these characters? I have my own thought, but interested to know what you would do, or what should be taken away from this, and what the entire direction from these characters should be. Should we just focus on Spider-Man only and nothing else? Or I don't know if there's maybe another pivot point or another creative direction they can take, but I'd just be interested to know what you think about that.
I think live action superhero Sony films without any other studio input, it needs to die. That's what I think. I don't think I think Venom only has so much left in it without Spider-Man, right? Without Spider-Man being part of that, because it just needs to happen. But I think we it's very clear at this point what happens when other studios aren't involved, right? Or it's not Sony animation. You know what I mean? I think we see what that feels and looks like, and at this point, I can't confidently say that I'm want to see another Sony live action superhero property. I can't, and I think because of that, that experiment has to die. I think I think Sony should go with what does work, and what is working is Marvel Studios. And I think all these characters that they're talking about and are trying to use should, and could be serviced in Tom Holland Spider-Man universe, right? I think that needs to be, in my mind, the new picture. Oh, there's a Madam Web movie coming out. Okay, but is it tied to Marvel Studios and in Tom Holland? Is Tom Holland in the movie? Is Venom 4, whatever that is it tied to Spider-Man that Marvel has going over here? Is Tom Holland in the movie? What's happening over there? Because honestly, the roster of heroes they have is so crazy, and some of them do need to be serviced in a way that is meaningful, right? That we can hold on to and be like, "Ooh, that was fire." I feel like that's only going to happen at this point from Marvel's point of view, from the Tom Holland point of view, in them being integrated in that way. I can definitely see the next Tom Holland Spider-Man movie. It's going to need villains. It's going to need Sony villains that they have, and so I feel like they need to latch onto that and use that partnership as their way forward, because I guarantee you they're going to make more money that way than whatever the shit show we just got with this film in Madam Web. I absolutely guarantee you, and so that's the way. That's the direction I think they should go. I don't think they're good at making, like, I don't from a studio standpoint, they're not good at making live action superhero films. There's just too much input from the studio. They're not giving the directors enough chances. I don't know what it is. There's a lot of things, but it's not working. And I think at this point, you got to stick to your guns. And what your guns are: Sony Animation and working with Marvel Studios. That's how I feel about it, until I see something else. How I feel about Kraven the Hunter, I have to give that character more than I gave Madam Web, only because he actually has more substance as a character kind of on his own than Madam Web did and does in the comics. There are things there for Kraven to do. We know Kraven as a character. More people know Kraven as a character, especially coming off the Spider-Man games, right? Coming off the things that we know Kraven can be. Does that mean it's going to be good? Hell no. You gonna have to convince the hell out of me now at this point that this Kraven movie is going to be anything close to good. I'm sorry, like, I was like semi interested before, but now I've lost it, to be honest. This movie in Morbius they've lost me. And it's very hard to do that with me. I'm always interested. I love superhero shit. I love watching it all. But now I'm like, ooh, do I have to go through that? Do I have to? Is Kraven going to be good? And so, yeah, man, I'm kind of in the abyss when it comes to these live action characters that Sony has in their pockets. So I have to see on that front. But I think there's things that they can do. I don't think this live action superhero thing is one of them.
Yeah, I think Craven's gonna suck. I think it's gonna be a train wreck again. I just don't. I don't have any
I
hope.
believe it.
Don't have any hope. The one thing that could save it is Aaron Taylor Johnson. He's amazing. He's a great actor.
Really
but
good.
we already saw a trailer, a while ago, of course, and it doesn't look great. And now this is just like reinforcing all the feelings that I think we kind of feel about Sony as an entity and their production of Marvel films and Spider-Man films. But my particular suggestion, not all that dissimilar, but I think even more so becoming focused and really establishing a lane. Animation only, period. Make that your lane, because what Sony Pictures Animation has done with Spider-Man is unprecedented. It's phenomenal. It's checking every single box that you can check: commercial success, financial success, critical success, award prestigious success. It's getting all of those things. Obviously, the Tom Holland stuff with Marvel Studios will continue. That's a given. But for what they do and what they invest their time and attention into, just make animated superhero movies, the Spider-Man movies. Make individual movies for Gwen Stacy and Jessica Drew and Miguel O'Hara. Just make a bunch of those. Like, just do that. Just do that only. And if you want to do the villains too, go ahead and do that, because I actually feel like you could do so much more in animation than you could in live action with those characters. There's so much more that you can play with. I mean, hell, they could become the Pixar of superhero animated films if they really wanted to. We don't have a studio that's producing theatrically released animated films for superheroes. It's not happening. All the stuff that Marvel Animation has done and will continue to do has been for Disney Plus with What If and X-Men 97 and Marvel Zombies. All right, that's cool, but we know that animation has a huge audience theatrically. That's one of the only types of films that you can still put out in theaters that is going to resonate with all audiences and it's going to make money hand over fist. We see what Illumination is doing. We see how successful those Despicable Me movies are, and obviously now the Super Mario stuff that they're doing with Nintendo. Like, there's a whole lane that's unoccupied. DC's not even tapping into it. That if they really wanted to, and they really want to retain the right to Spider-Man because they have to keep making movies, obviously, just make Spider-Man animated movies. You clearly have the infrastructure there to make it work. You have the foundations there with the Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse franchise, and you can take that and spin it out into so many other ways, into so many other avenues, clearly based off of what we've seen out of those movies. Like, there's infinite possibilities, and you still have access to the villains. So you still can have those conflicts between hero and villains. Like, just do that. Just literally do that. Live action, everything what you said, it should end. It should be over. I think after Craven comes out and that does whatever it does, and then Venom 3 comes out, cut the cord, wrap it up. It's done. I'm sorry. I'm not interested in the Spider-Man Noir series that's circling at Amazon. I know we heard about it. They're talking about Nicolas Cage. I don't want that for my guy. I like him too much because it doesn't feel like it's going to be great. Hypno Hustler, fuck it. I don't want that for you, Donald Glover. I just saw you in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. You're doing great stuff on TV. Do something else. That Bad Bunny smelt it. That's why he's not doing El Muerto anymore. He probably saw that shit and was like, you know what? This ain't great. I don't need to be doing this. Let me go ahead and detach myself. I think the signs are obviously there that they can't cut it when it comes to this live action stuff. So abandon ship while you still can, because the losses are tremendous now. Financially, I don't even know how you can justify this anymore based on what we're seeing these box office performances do for these films. Like, that should tell you enough. Make the stuff with Tom Holland, with Marvel Studios, and then, bro, dominate animation. Take it over because nobody else is doing it. I think that there's a ton of untapped potential there. That's what I would do if I had the keys over at Sony, but we don't. So we'll have to sit back and see and ultimately await whatever decision they make. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on Madam Web. If you've seen this movie, which you likely have not or ever will see, hit us up and let us know what you think about it. Share your thoughts.